Hi, I'm Miss Tyler, and welcome to Gospel Studies, Context for Kids, number 9. This is the third time that I've tried to teach this because this is really funny. Okay, we've been having a terrible, terrible windstorm. We had winds yesterday like nothing I've ever seen, and we've got a really tall fence around our yard. And the neighbor's trampoline blew over the fence. It was all like a way far away, blew across their big yard, over the fence, into my yard. And so we just had to, I just had to go and deal with that. But the neighbors are really nice people, and you know what? We're new to this area, and it was a great way to meet our neighbors, and it was really funny. Nothing got damaged. There was just this huge trampoline in our backyard all of a sudden, and it's like, wow. So praise God, no one was hurt and nothing was hurt, and the trampoline's going to be fine. It's just really funny. So anyway, this week I was going to teach about adoption in the ancient world, but you know, I was just having trouble getting it together. And I talked to some parents and asked them if they would like me to present a certain kind of teaching, and pretty much they all said yes. And so this week I'm going to teach you an important study skill. And it's something that you're going to use all of your life. It's something that's really unavoidable. And that is, what do you do if you need to learn something, but the person who's teaching it doesn't agree with you about everything? And so that happens to me every day, and so I'm going to teach that to you. You know, when we're reading stuff about the first century, about the life of Yeshua or Jesus, you know, the only people who were writing stuff down pretty much were the Jews. If you want to find out about what life was like for Yeshua, you need to look at Jewish writings. Historical writings that took place at that time and for a while later. And because I'll tell you something, the Romans weren't very interested in writing about the Jews, and the most popular early Christian writings were from a while afterward, and they were from a different cultural perspective. So if we want to know about Yeshua's or Jesus's life, we need to look at Jewish writings, and sometimes we look at modern Jewish writings, and these were written by people who never or don't accept Yeshua as the Messiah. Now, how can we justify listening to them? Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm reading a book right now called, and this is a very good book, and it's written at a level that almost anyone can understand, really. I think. Yeah, I think it's, compared to the normal stuff I read, it's pretty easy. What Crucified Jesus? And it was written by Ellis Rivkin. Now, Ellis Rivkin, at the end of his life, he got his PhD from John Hopkins, which means he is brainiac. And actually, he was born in 1918, and he was an Orthodox Jew in his youth. He became conservative Jew later on. Now, he never accepted Jesus as the Messiah, but he is an expert on the historical, political situation in first century Judaism. If you want to know how the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and the Herodians and the Zealots and the Sicarii, how they were all interacting with each other, he's your guy. And, you know, it's interesting, through most of his life, he was unwilling to read the New Testament, the Gospels, because he was taught that they were dangerous writings, and yeah, it's very like how Christians sometimes say, well, don't read the stuff that Jews write, that's dangerous. And yet, most of the really cool stuff that I teach, you're going to find, came from Jewish writings. That's where I get it, because they were eyewitnesses to the history of Yeshua's life. They knew what the laws were. They knew what the customs were, the things that people were and were not doing. All those little insights that help show us that this Bible passage means this because this is what was going on. And for me, that's just, I love that. I love understanding the words of our Messiah. So anyway, he wrote this book, and it doesn't say who crucified Jesus, it's what crucified Jesus, and it's all about that first century political situation. And it's an excellent book. And like I said, he does not believe that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah of Israel. But what he does is he goes through all the historical writings like Josephus and what Josephus had to say about John the Baptist. And this guy loves John the Baptist. Oh my gosh. And Jesus. And you know what? He really likes Jesus too. He goes through the kind of people that they were as revealed in not only the biblical writings, but in extra biblical writings. And he presents a really fair case. Now, why can we listen to him even though he doesn't accept Yeshua as the Messiah? Well, because I didn't go to him to find out if Yeshua was the Messiah, and that's not what he's teaching here. I go to him because he is an expert in a field of study that I'm not an expert in. He knew way more, because he died in 2010. He's 92 years old. Dang, wow, that's pretty cool. He spent his life studying that first century context. And so he knows stuff. I go to him to learn because I don't know this stuff. I can't figure it out myself. I would have to do 92 years of studying to figure out, the stuff that he learned. And so I go to him because he did the work. He did the research. And so I need an expert. Does it matter that the expert never believed that Yeshua was the Messiah? No, because it doesn't enter into it. Whether or not Yeshua was the Messiah has nothing to do with anything that he is going to tell me about the first century political situation between all of the rival factions in Judaism and the Romans. Okay? Does that make sense? See, I'm not going to him for religious advice. Okay? I'm not going to him for doctrinal stuff. I'm not going to him for that. I'm respecting him in the place where he is an expert and I'm not. And that's the same with all my books. I've got books written by Christians who I really respect them as researchers, but they believe something, like George Mendenhall. Actually, just about everyone who was writing in the 1950s and 60s, they couldn't get a book published unless they bought into something called the documentary hypothesis. Now, the documentary hypothesis says that the Bible wasn't written when the Bible says it was, that it was all written during and after the Babylonian exile. Well, in some cases, that's that's over 1,000 years after the events took place. Okay? So, and they say that their priests wrote some of it, and these LOS wrote it, and then they kind of put it all together. You had to agree with that. You had to promote that in the 1950s and 60s. So when I read their books, I have to ignore that. Because I believe the Bible was written when it says it was written by. I believe the first 5 books of the Bible were written by Moses. I believe the 6th was written by Joshua. And on and on and on. I believe 1st and 2nd Samuel were written by Samuel and Nathan and Gad. Okay? That's what I believe. But Mendenhall and Klein and the others, they have a lot to teach me that I don't know. Klein taught me a lot about covenants, and I wrote a book about that. These guys, they wrote things that I disagreed with. That doesn't mean they have nothing to teach me. In fact, they have a lot to teach me, and they did teach me a lot, and I teach you a lot of what they taught me. Now, here's another example. The Mishnah. I've told you about the Mishnah. It was codified, which means finalized. That's not when it was written, around 200 AD. Okay? So within 200 years of the life of our Messiah. Now, I found out something really cool a while back, and that is there was a priest named Eliezer ben Yaakov. And he lived during the time when the Second Temple was still standing, and he was a priest in the temple. He wrote 3 of the tractates that are in here. Midot, Tamid, and I can't remember the other one. But I believe they were all in Seder Kodashim. Now, Tractate Tamid tells us exactly the sacrifices that, and Yoma. That's the Yom Kippur ceremonies. So because I listen or read Eliezer ben Yaakov, who did not believe that Yeshua was the Messiah, I know exactly what was going on in the temple on the day of Yom Kippur, which is a feast that teaches us a lot about Yeshua. Okay? And the only reason we know that is because he wrote it down faithfully. Tamid, the twice daily sacrifices. We know that because of Eliezer ben Yaakov writing. He was a first-hand eyewitness. Okay? And then there was, what's the third one? Midot. Midot gives us, the dimensions for the temple. These are all important aspects of Yeshua's life. And they sometimes, the Bible will say something like they were on Solomon's porch. Well, that sounds like they were kicking back on the porch at Solomon's palace, which had been long destroyed. Drinking lemonades and, kicking back. And no, Solomon's porch was a place on the Temple Mount. But we have to read these books of the Temple Scroll. We have to read things from people who didn't agree with us because they were eyewitnesses of the time. Josephus, the famous Roman historian. Of course, he wasn't a Roman. He was priestly. He was Jewish, and he came from the priestly line. So he knew. He was born in 37 AD, just not very many years after Yeshua died. So he knew what was going on. He wrote a lot of stuff about the temple. Like I said, he wrote about John. Well, I didn't tell you, but it's in that book, What Crucified Jesus. He wrote in glowing terms about John the Baptist. So we know the Bible didn't make him up because we have him through. We know that the Bible didn't make Jesus up, Yeshua up, because Josephus, first century historian, wrote about him. Okay? But he didn't accept Yeshua as the Messiah, even though early copies were obviously doctored to make it look like he did. But Josephus never accepted Yeshua as Messiah. Okay, so I hope you understand when you want information, you go to the experts. Okay, and I'm not talking about reading the Quran, which is the Muslim holy book. I'm not talking about, diving into Buddhism. Yeah. I am talking about when you want to know something about the life of our Messiah, the Jewish writings are the only real source that we have that can be first-hand. Now, we've got the early church fathers, and some of them, like Justin Martyr, lived pretty close to the time of Yeshua, but not during that time. So we need information on what was going on during the temple times, because the temple was an integral part of Yeshua's ministry. Whenever he was in Jerusalem, he was at the temple. The 2 times where he kicked up a ruckus was because people were defiling his father's house. They were acting disrespectfully on the Temple Mount. We learn these things because we listen to people who don't agree with us in the areas, in the factual areas where they are experts. You see, they don't believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, not because of facts, okay, but because of belief and opinion. But in the areas where they have facts, we need to listen to them and other voices that have that expertise. So you don't need to be scared of listening to people in their areas of expertise. What you need to do, and what we all need to do, is learn to, when we're reading through a book, say, okay, this is where he's got hardcore facts, and this is where he's stating his opinions and theories. We all write a mixture of facts and theories. That's one of the things that we have to learn how to discern when someone's talking about one or the other. All right? So I hope that helps you out. Anyway, we're going to have a little discipleship moment. This is really, really funny. Okay, I told you about the trampoline that blew over my fence. Now, I had not met my neighbor yet. And so here we've got this huge trampoline in our backyard, and you know what? I could have gotten mad that they didn't tie it down, they didn't stake it down, whatever. You know what? And I could have left a nasty note on his door, and I could have copped an attitude and all this stuff. But you know what? I just left a note in his door saying, your trampoline's in our yard. We'll help you push it back in, when you guys get home. And I left that note, and this morning he came over and he was just stunned about the trampoline. And you know what? Because I didn't comp an attitude with him, which I really had no reason to do, nothing was injured. But even if something had been, it wasn't on purpose. Made a new friend. Met him, met his grown kids, his grandkids, and now I have a new neighbor who I'm on good terms with. And so, every interaction, even if it seems like something wrong has happened, we have an opportunity to behave like Yeshua, to be merciful and not judgmental, to be kind, and to make a new friend, and to allow them to see what a disciple of Yeshua does. Do they behave like the world? Do they behave mean? Do they behave spiteful? Do you humiliate people who are already feeling embarrassed? Or do you cut them some slack and laugh it off and get them to laugh about it too and make a friend? I think you know what the answer is. Anyway, that's it for this week. I love you. I'm praying for you, and I pray you have a wonderful week studying scriptures together as a family. And I hope that you enjoy in your future learning from people who disagree with you and realizing that it's okay to disagree, and that still doesn't take anything away from the fact that they are an expert in something and that we need to humble ourselves and learn from them, just like we would want them to humble themselves and learn from us if we had something that they needed to learn. You take care. Bye-bye now.